How's everybody doing? And I'm sure neither of us would mind if anyone wanted to go up and get a ice cream real quick.
I'm definitely not going to be thinking about them this whole conversation. Hello, thanks for having us. Maybe we introduce ourselves super quick. I mean, we already were. Henry Cowling, CIO with Media.Monks. Media.Monks is an agency end-to-end with 9,000 people globally, 500 here in the Bay Area. And that's the end of my pitch for Media.Monks. If you want to hear more about it, I'll bore you with it another time. And this is Aaron.
Hi, Aaron Magness with a company called Thistle. We're in the subscription food space, plant-based, with a mission to help everyone get and stay healthy while improving the sustainability of the food system.
And that's how you're supposed to do the elevator pitch. Okay, Aaron. So if you don't know, Aaron has worked for sort of a who's who of disruptive direct-to-consumer brands. Beta brand, if I'm pronouncing that in the correct American way. My inclination to say beta brand. Brandless, Zappos, and now Thistle. What are you? Did some kind of punk? Like you just like what's the mindset of a perennial disruptor?
You know, I think I've been super lucky to work with a lot of brands that really care about customers and think about things a little bit differently. I think the continuation of that is lucky people put themselves in position to be lucky. So I have no problem gambling, and you know, I like to make bets, and I'm going to bet on myself. So, you know, in these opportunities, if you can see you think that there's opportunity to be able to step in and help someone in a way and actually do something unique that others aren't doing, then I think, you know, you owe it to yourself to take advantage of that versus, you know, how do I be a cog in somewhere else, particularly as you're young, just continue to go try the next thing that is going to, you know, more primarily take care of yourself, set you up for the future for your next role. I think that's just a key mindset that I think a lot of people need to make sure that they have.
Cool, man. Cool. How do you think about the role of CMO? Do you think it's particularly different in the D2C space? What is the role of CMO in the customer experience? Like, do you have a philosophy on it?
You know, I think, you know, the role of whatever heads of marketing, I think the role of a marketer is to be more curious than anyone else. And I think that's something I pride myself at. Like, no matter, you know, how much you know about the company, the business, your specific role, if you're more curious than the next person, you're going to go a level deeper and you're going to find more out. And I think as that plays into how brands interact with consumers, the main thing is, you know, I'm going to ask the 5 W's and probably, you know, 5 more. Partly because I'm not the smartest person, so I need to ask a lot of questions. But I also know that I need to ask a lot of questions, and I'm very comfortable asking a lot of questions and trying to learn more from the next person. So by doing that, I can dig in on how can our brand show up for this customer based on what their needs are and wants and loves and things like that. And I think that's a key component where, you know, as you really start looking through, you know, other roles and opportunities, I think the role of the CEO is to be head of marketing. The role of the head of people is to be head of marketing. The role of engineering is to be the head of marketing. And then I think as the CMO, you know, your job is to be the cheerleader. And how do you bring them all together? And how do you make sure we all stay aligned on the message we're talking about, when we're talking about, how we're talking about it? But I think we want to make sure that everyone in the company feels agency and ownership of how we're promoting our brand and make sure we're putting it out in the best way possible.
Nice. I'm just cribbing lines from this guy when he talks. When we spoke earlier, you were talking about the philosophy of always focusing on creating value for the consumer. I'm interested in the D2C space, in the subscription space. How do you think differently about like driving a conversion moment versus driving lifetime value? Brand versus conversion, is that a trade-off for you?
Hopefully not, right? Like every way and every touch point you have with a customer, you're building your brand, right? And the old adage of your brand doesn't matter, it's how others describe you, right? I think that's super key and super important. And as a marketer, my goal has always been, I think some people always like, how can we extract a little more value out of this customer, right? Like get one more transaction, get a little more AOV, get a little more whatever. And my sort of push back on that is how can we use our brand to provide a little more value to our customer? And if you do that well, And if you do that naturally, if you do that in a way that, you know, the customer can appreciate, then they'll reward you with loyalty. And I think, you know, at Thistle, I'll give just a quick example. You know, we were wondering how else can Thistle show up for our customers because they're trusting us. Like they're eating our food. We make the food. We give them, like the level of trust there is so high. So what else can we be doing to help them think about health and wellness? And people are asking a lot, well, I need help on this journey. Like, you know, eating healthy is hard. I'm busy as shit. The sky's falling. You know, how can I take some of this decision making, you know, off my plate? So what we did is I realized that we had a few registered dietitians in our customer service team, and that's what drew them to Thistle. So I said, well, if we've got registered dietitians and people are looking for help on how to think about their diet and health, why don't we just pair that together, and then, you know, all new customers can get a free 4-week consultation on registered dietitian. So it's like that aspect where, and probably it's, I'll take credit and blame Zappos for this. It's because, you know, it wasn't thinking about how can I spend less time with the customer. It's how can I spend more? How can I do one more thing which will allow them to be a little more engaged with the brand? And I think it's things like this that we continue to beat that drum, which helps us drive, you know, extreme retention in our category. Because we have delicious food, and we're always trying to find ways to provide a little more value to our customers.
Do you think that difference between the mindset of like extracting value from your customer base versus providing value for them is sort of key to your career?
I think the curiosity on figuring out what additional value you can add, I think has been key to the career. Right. And then I think it's figuring out how do you articulate that in a way that is actually true, right? Like I would think, you know, maybe if Thistle was trying to show a bunch of people how to exercise, that's probably not the right fit. Like, what do we know? We're making food. There's amazing brands that are out there doing that. But if we think about from a food perspective, what can we actually do to level up and plus up a little bit what our offering is? I think those are the things. And, you know, a lot of our challenges in early stage, late stage doesn't really matter, is we have 1,000 things we can do every single day, right? And we can try to boil the ocean. We can try to eat the elephant. And I think, as Steve Jobs has said, right, like it's like 90% of, eat the elephant. How do you eat the elephant? One bite at a time. Sorry, it's a bad reference, but it's something that, you know, you have to think about where can you focus? And I think Steve Jobs said, you know, 90% of your success is about things you say no to. It may be not exactly what he said, but he should have said something like that. But I think that's a key component. So as you're thinking through, we could do all these things. What are the few things we could be best at? And then how do we not worry about the rest? Because we'll be able to get to the rest in the future if we do these few things very well today.
Very cool, man. And then just thinking a bit more about lifetime value, I remember when we were talking, you shared an anecdote with me about the entry point that consumers had at Zappos, and like, and sort of the way that they found their way into the brand affected the duration of their whole journey with the brand.
Yeah, this was a big unlock for us. You know, Zappos about 100 years ago when I was head of marketing there. But the big unlock was, you know, we were growing, we were big, and we were changing the way I think a lot of e-commerce was being done is done today. And a big unlock was if your first purchase, and the importance of understanding data and how to think about data as a marketer, I think is super key here. But if your first purchase was shoes, you'd only ever buy shoes from us. But if your first purchase was apparel, you'd buy apparel, you'd buy shoes, you'd buy bags, you'd buy all the accessories. So the LTV of that customer was much different. The margin of that customer was much different. So I ended up running like a 3-year ad campaign, really focused on Zappos more than shoes. That was my internal mindset, and getting people to move into a broader assortment. And I think that learning allowed me to find unlocks along the way to figure out, okay, in each business, what is the unlock that's going to help someone be, you know, more loyal to your brand, and not just go from first purchase to maybe second purchase. Second purchase doesn't equal loyalty, right? Like, how do you get them to be loyal? And then how do you, you know, help them understand how your brand fits into their life in a way beyond just that one credit card swipe? That's a key component. And I think, you know, I've tried to do that in each business that I've been in since.
Nice. So real talk. What are you seeing in the economy right now? What are the challenges out there? Like, what's the view look like from Thistle right now? And you promised me the unvarnished truth.
Yeah. We, to be clear, we don't have it figured out. This shit's really hard right now, right? Like, Caitlin's going to speak a little more elegantly about this, but everyone wants to raise their hand and talk about Facebook. It's not that, but things play into it. So one of the things we're finding is, it's harder to acquire customers than it used to be. But the customers we acquire, they're actually spending more with us, and they're sticking with us longer. So it's helping us offset things. And as we grow, it's actually helping us, continue to offset these incremental costs because our customer base is so large and loyal. I think part of our challenge, though, is limited time, energy, and resources. Where do we put our focus at, and how do we think about the things that are working, and how do we not get distracted by the shiny object? And I think that's a key challenge that all brands are having right now. If like, oh shit, CAC is rising, well then let me do these 100 things, and then you don't know what the impact of any one of those 100 things are. So ours is, I try to be pretty methodical in how we think about things. My team is incredibly adept and attuned with how the business is doing, which allows them to be more nimble and think more freely and have a more agency. Because I think what all of us are doing, like the challenges at Thistle are big for us. The challenges at HP are big for them. Very different, but the shit's really hard, and we have to figure out, how to get there. So I think where that continues is, how do you think about marketing from old school? I'm not going to get into that because a smarter person will later, but, how do you get back into, really thinking about why marketing matters, and how do you get back into, I think one thing we were talking about, like the lazy marketing is over. We all benefit from lazy marketing for the last decade, right? Like, I'm not the smartest marketer. My businesses that I've been part of, a lot of them have done very well. That's because, the ecosystem allowed for that. And now it's getting back to the basics, why we're here, how do you provide value, and how do you make a product that, people love.
Lazy marketing is over. Is it going on my next slide presentation? We just to build on that, I guess we've spoken a bit, and the vibe I'm getting in the industry right now is there's a lot of talk about the maturation of the D2C model, about in some ways, and I don't want to again foreshadow the talk we're going to hear later, but the saturation potentially of channels like Facebook, and I think as marketers, I don't want to say we've had it easy because it's never been easy in this industry, right? But like from the perspective that we have right now, the last 10 years maybe looks a little easier than the landscape that we're looking at right now. Are you seeing new pathways to growth in the landscape? Where do you think innovation needs to come from? Do you have any particular point of view on that?
The maturation of DTC, I think it might be a false equivalent. I think maturation of free money, that has probably gone away, right? So our ability to just spend a lot of dollars that are freely pouring in to acquire more customers, I think we all have to be a little more smarter than that. Hopefully we find more brands thinking a lot about their existing customers and how to reward them and how do we treat them with respect that they deserve and not as just credit cards that are sitting in a wallet. And I think that has been, at least in our world, and again, we're subscription, so maybe that's a little forcing mechanism, but it really has allowed us to put our attention into what is important right now. And, for us, and a marketer's best friend, I always say is, a marketer's best friend is a product that people love, right? So we can't lose sight of the fact that we deliver food. People are trusting us with that food. It has to be the most delicious food they taste. Right, and because otherwise there's a million options in our category. There's tons of choices. When you look at the greater category of food consumption, there's a million options. So, like, how do we do what we do better than everyone else? And how do we control what we can control and then not try to be the best at everything else, right? And I think it goes back to that continued and maniacal focus on how do we love our customer more than the next person? Because in our space, everyone, I'm sure anyone been a member of a subscription food service? Okay, has anyone tried Thistle? All right, my 4 favorite people. But like, has everyone else, you've probably been a member to more than one, right? So you're constantly looking about what is that next option. And I think this really stands out to us because we do hear a lot, and we all, drink our own Kool-Aid, but we do hear a lot, and it seems to show out if you believe some of these, credit card data information. Our retention has held up because that's what we care about most. We understand what does our customer really want, and they, for us, they join Thistle for three primary reasons. They want to save time. She's incredibly busy, right? And that's a big key. They want to eat healthy, because that's a really big deal. We're all eating on the go and not taking care of our bodies. And then they want to lose weight. We try to spin that last one a little differently, whereas if you are able to save time doing things that are important to you, if you're able to eat healthy, you don't have to focus much on losing weight. You can focus more on how you feel. So we try to help pivot that last point and celebrate the good that you're doing. Don't feel bad for the shit that you're not, right? So that's a little bit different mindset of how we try to push back on that. But I think that thread is how we try to push through on, this changing area of focus from marketing's perspective.
Cool. I like the affirming twist on the losing weight. I think that's important. You mentioned to me some interesting supply chain challenges you've been having. I just want to share that anecdote.
Yeah, I mean, it's super sad. Again, I said the sky is falling. Like, it's all over the place, right? Like, and for us in our space, supply chains, we had, tens of thousands. We deliver fresh, so we have bags that we deliver in. Tens of thousands of bags sitting on boats for weeks and weeks and weeks that we had to last minute pivot to local fulfillment or for the bags, which 5x cost, that sort of thing. We use healthier products in ingredients. Sunflower oil is a really big deal to us. Number one place to buy sunflower oil is Ukraine. Number two place is Russia, right? So that whole infrastructure is turned upside down. And I think as we think through, well, what are the things we can control? And we had this decision around, hey, we could actually take this opportunity because this supply chain is all of a sudden really expensive and really disrupted. What if we just go with this cheap, and I'll use oil generically as a solution here? But my voice and others, and it is very quick conversation of, no, food is what matters to us. So deliciousness and health is super key. So we're able to find an oil that is actually additive, very good for you, all the things. So we're able to move across, but it's that, we're all challenged with a lot of hard things right now. So how do we just keep sort of peeling the layers of the onions to, well, what can we control right now? Let's tackle that. Let's be the best at that. And then we'll worry about the next thing, because otherwise it could be too overwhelming.
Sounds like a refreshingly intentful and focused approach to work, which, coming from the agency side, I think we could all benefit from a bit more. So obligatory Web3 question time. I mean, we talked about new pathways to growth. I'm certainly not like a maxi in this space, but I think part of my role, at least as CIO, is to help our partners explore these new landscapes and find new ways to engage with customers, new ways to, in some cases, create whole new revenue streams in emerging technology and touch points. Are you at all interested in Web3? Do you see a use for it at Thistle?
So the faster answer is 90% of the success is stuff you say no to. Right? And we could go chase the thing that is the shiny topic right now. Actually, in the last, 6 weeks, Web3's been pretty quiet, right? Like, and for us...
That's complimentary.
Yeah. So all the thought leaders, sending, 20 threaded tweets on why Web3 is going to be the future. I think they're being hopefully a little more focused now. I think Web3 could be interesting. The concept of a tokenized product, the sharks were talking about, I don't know where he went. Sorry if he's around. We're talking about a great execution. I know Empire Records, they do a great thing where a tokenized approach to Hoodie, where if you go, all the dollars go to the artist because the ticketing system is so effed up that, no one makes money on tickets. So I think those types of things will be interesting. I think for us, how do we think about loyalty? How can we reward people for being loyal in a unique and special way? I think that's probably how Web3 plays out. I'm not looking to build billboards in a metaverse, anytime soon. I don't think that's the right level of focus for us. But I think as things evolve and change, and the whole concept of Web3 in general expands a bit more. Anyone remember, Second Life? Right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
yeah, right? We've, and again, not comparing, not saying same, and I'm not that much of a dinosaur, but I think in intentionally thinking about how can this product provide more value to our customer is more important than how can I get my brand in front of more eyeballs. Because if you have an incredibly valuable and respectful brand, I think people can find you if you have a great product. Versus, again, the days of cheap dollars, I think are gone for a little while.
It's a longer play, and looking at the new digital, as it were, through the lens of a new landscape to create value for your customers.
Said more elegantly than I said.
I
yes.
had the benefit of listening to you and preparing my beats. I also remember the moment when Second Life was exclusively marketers talking to marketers, and that was the moment I think that particular dream died. Okay, just a couple more questions. I'm interested in how you operationalize. Do you think about, and obviously this is a bit of a beat for Media.Monks because it's sort of our philosophy, but it might or might not be yours. Do you think about integrating teams around data, media, content, technology? Like, do you have a philosophy around like those people sitting together? Are they the same people in some cases?
I think the main thing is, what can we be best at? Mm-hmm. And for us, we can be the best at understanding our customer. We could be the best at creating the food for our customer. And we can be the best at delivering the food for our customer. We have a reverse logistics built in, so it's really hard to do that with third-party partners. So those things we could be really good at. Can we be the best at building a referral program? Probably not. Can we be the best at setting up a marketing stack that is a simple, SendGrid integration? I don't know if that's our jam, right? So I think that's how we try to think about it. And then, I'm a big believer in using partners and agencies to help accelerate growth, help understand where the opportunities and wins are. And then agencies aren't always the cheapest option, right? And then when it comes to a point, and for me, I think mentally I sort of trigger, can I hire 2 people for this fee? If so, maybe I should hire at least one person, right? And then I can start to bring that knowledge base in-house. But as opposed to, I think a lot of people are like, I'm either pro-agency or anti, I think is a great response before. Like, I don't think you can be either, but how can you accelerate learnings fastest? Because we can raise anything except for time, right? So in that instance, if I can learn faster in the next 6 months by using an agency as a great partner, I think the key component, and probably the brands that you love working with the most, they have to be thought of as a partner, right? Like, it's not just an extended person that's going to do all the grunt work. Like, they have to be thought leaders. I think I rely on my extended teams very closely. I need to make sure that they're understanding our business. I need to make sure that they care about our business. And it's not, okay, I'll check in once a week on a call and it's obvious they haven't paid attention to how things are going. How things are going. I think that is the key component. Treat your partners with respect. Allow them to help you accelerate your learning. And then when it makes sense to pull that knowledge base in-house, that's when you do it.
Cool. And presumably those 2 people that you hire come from the agency that you commission.
So actually, don't recruit. I never recruit from the agencies that we use, out of respect. But I will almost exclusively recruit from agencies. And this is across media, this is across creative, this is across PR. Media.Monks, I'm sure, is very different. But most agencies, I find, overwork their staff. They force them to tackle all sorts of things without ever being able to take credit. And I'll come back to that last part. And they tend to be underpaid. Again, present company excluded. Here it's amazing.
We treat our people pretty well.
That's right.
Everyone's interested.
But
come work with me.
But that last point is, right, when a brand does really well, even if they're partnering with an agency, who wins? That brand. That head of marketing, they were the hero. She came up with the best idea. She put it in a market. Is great. She got interviewed and, Ad Age and Ad Week and, went to Cannes. When things go sideways, who's the finger pointed at? It's the agency, right? Every time we got a new agency, our agency sucks, our account manager sucks, right? So that's my pitch to why I always recruit from agencies, because I think it's so obvious. You get the blame, no credit, and when those teammates come on board, they have the not agency experience, but the agency, the wherewithal, the ability to actually take ownership and see it all the way through, their ability to lean in because they've had to juggle all the things. It's just so energizing. So every time someone comes on board, so that's how I've pretty much always tried to grow my teams.
Nice, man. School of hard knocks at his agency life. All right, last question. And the thing is probably a quick one. The vibe I'm getting, you talked a lot about focus. That seems to be just like your MO, as it were. And the potentially apocryphal Steve Jobs quote, success is about what you say no to. What are you saying no to right now, or what would you like to be saying no to? Maybe it's a different way of phrasing it.
What am I saying no to? I mean, so right now I'm saying no to Web3. I think one thing it's super important from a marketer, how closely are you partnered with your engineering and product teams, right? Like in making sure that you are super aligned on what's important today. And in our world, what's important today may not be important tomorrow. And it probably wasn't important 6 months ago, right? So having that flexibility and confidence and trust to say, hey, I was pushing so hard for this 6 months ago, now it doesn't matter. Right now, let's continue, down this other path. And I think that is a key component. Every day on the buy side of marketing, we're pitched by 100 brands that can increase conversion, reduce costs, increase, whatever. Like, you can't. You don't know my business. That's a bad pitch. What is helpful, though, is understanding who else has gone through similar problems and then been able to find partners that can help you get through that. So I think I'm very much a fast no on most cold inbound sales pitches for that reason. It takes confidence for someone to say, hey, I've never met you and I've never worked at your company, but I know that I can reduce costs. I'm not going to sign on to commit to that reduction. I'm not going to do any of that. So I think that is key. And I think right now specifically, it's what are the things, how can I make sure my next dollar spent is more efficient than the previous one? Dollars are so valuable right now. I think in all businesses, but earlier stage that, we rely on a few rounds of fundraising, how can we be more efficient today? So right now I'm saying no to a lot of things. But the things I'm probably saying yes to are, better understanding of how our marketing spend is going. We historically, attribution is really hard. It takes big teams or expensive third parties. How can we do that a little more efficiently with a little more focus? And how can we make sure that we are not losing sight of what's important, and that is that customer? And how do we, show respect? It's not about, and it comes down to little words. Oftentimes in marketing world, you talk about, and then we'll do this, and then we'll hit them with another email. Like, bullshit. You don't hit people. Like, don't do that, right? Like, and then we, send them another, we can send them another email with a different angle on how to think about the brand, right? I think those types of things matter, and I think that respect goes down the full level of the organization. And I think saying yes to more things that can help us understand what our customers' wants, needs, loves are, I think are going to help us, be a brand that sustains.
Very cool. I think that's a great philosophy of marketing and customer obsession, but meaning it and taking it right down to the words that you're using internally in your culture, I think is really interesting. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Any questions from our delightful audience? Cue awkward pause.
What was that?
Applause.